Hi there, and welcome to the Multiply You podcast, where we showcase top experts in their space and reveal all the secrets you need to know to multiply you.
Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Austin Clark here, host of the Multiply You podcast, where I interview top experts in their space and leaders in business. Today, I've got my great friend, Jeremy Weiss, here with me of Rise 25. He's done thousands and thousands of interviews with very successful entrepreneurs, CEOs, business people, experts in their space. And we'll flip the script today, and he will be interviewing me. Jeremy, so glad to have you. Thank you for being on.
Austin, I'm excited. In today's topic, we're going to talk about change and the inevitabilities of change. And you're going to go deep into this and how this relates to businesses in general. Before we get into it, the episode is brought to you by Moxie Pest Control. And I know, Austin, if anyone's listening to any other podcasts, the number one focus for you, besides serving your customers, growing your team, is buying other pest control businesses. And so if you are a pest control business out there, you know of one, then contact them. It's most likely someone with 3 or more trucks on the road, really reputable, respectable brand. He'd love to talk to them. And even people who he's talked to were not considering selling have, I guess you would say, got them interested, and they never thought they could sell the company for what they paid for it. So if you have questions, you can email aclark@moxiepestcontrol.com or text them directly, 480-254-9730, and contact them. So Austin, about change, when you think of change, what comes to mind for you?
The first thing that comes to mind is like our ancestors, yours and mine, the cave people, I guess. And really just understanding that if we don't change, we will become extinct. And it's not quite, I guess it's still applicable today, but it's not quite as serious as life and death as it was back then for that group or that era, right? But if we refuse to change, well, here's the deal. Change is happening, period. And so are you going to roll with that? Are you going to be a first shaker or a first mover? Are you going to resist it? And so if we know that the change is inevitable, whether it's with us personally, whether it's with business, whatever, that's just a really, really good thing to be able to know. And so I know that there's a lot of resources that we're going to mention throughout this podcast, but really embracing change and driving change, I think is really just a key for success.
Yeah, I think it comes down to you keep your finger on the pulse of different ways, technologies, ways of running the business. And even if you look at the onset of the internet, people were probably like, what's the internet? That's not going to be a thing. So embracing that, if you're first to embrace it, you can thrive in a big way. So talk about maybe some of the things that you have found that have shaped, maybe home services or pest control, as far as whether it's technology or something else.
Yeah. So I'll certainly, I think anyone that's listening right now, if you just look back at the last decade, 2 decades, I think that some of the biggest things that have been introduced that weren't here previously is the rapid pace in which technology is advancing and the strides that it's making. And if you look at different charts, like the bell curve on that, it's like straight up right now. And so if you start back 50 or so years ago in the 70s and the 80s, you see different pieces of technology becoming available. To today, it's just advancing at an exponential type rate. The other thing, especially for business or otherwise, is social media. And so, think about it, Jeremy, like 20 years ago, what social media was out there, right? It wasn't Facebook. It wasn't Instagram.
Like MySpace,
it wasn't TikTok.
or something?
I don't even know if MySpace was around in 2000, was it?
Oh,
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't remember, but I was on it for a short period of time.
I was going to say, no, you're just embarrassed. You still remember your MySpace login and username, but
I still use it.
Yeah, you still use it. You're one person that's still active on MySpace, but so like what was around in the early 2000s or even just before that it was, I think, mostly just like TV, and you're either on TV or you're not. And so I think those two things, if I can back up just a little bit too, to talk a little bit more specifically about the pest space, I think there's two or three really, really big things that are happening and have been happening for the last decade and will continue into the next decade as it relates to technology, and then just the industry. And so thing number one is technology. And that can be or is problematic for most of the pest industry. I think I've mentioned on this show before, but most of the pest industry, most pest control owners in the United States, it is similar to the construction industry or framing industry or landscaping industry in the sense that it is predominantly male. I don't know why, but it just is. And so even today, we're hiring about 30 or 40 people to be able to help us ramp up and keep up with all of the growth that we're experiencing, et cetera. When we advertise for our field experts, 99% of the people that apply are male, right? When we advertise for office care, office experts, it's more female. And so the reason I share that is that most of the industry in the pest space is predominantly male, and of these operators that we're talking about, a lot of them are mid 50s, mid 60s. I've met a handful the last probably quarter or two that are even into their 70s. And so my folks, they're in their mid to late 50s right now. And I know some of the challenges that they have with different pieces of technology. And my folks, my parents, they are not old. I don't consider them old. But I've seen that technology can be a scary thing or a challenge or something that is very difficult for older generations to be able to embrace. I look at my kids who are ages 4 to 12. My younger kids, they were almost born with the tablet in their hands. I mean, they will never know what a phone looks like that has a cord attached to it. Never. You know what I mean? And so as I consider a lot of these pest control operators, not just in Arizona, but nationally, look towards the next chapter of their life, whatever that may be, and the next chapter of their business, if they want to continue to grow and to thrive, there is a lot of technology that they need to embrace. And sometimes it's just too much headache to be able to do that. So that's one thing. It's the technology. And the second thing is coupled with kind of the age of the industry and the challenge that may be. The third piece is there's a lot of really young, ambitious entrepreneurs that are entering not just the pest space, but the home service space, because it's very, very blue collar, outdated, perhaps. I'd even use that word, maybe outdated, and can really use a fresh new look. And so, you consider also who is starting to come into the market as far as consumers, millennials. And I think we've talked about this previously too, but millennials are starting to be a big part of that customer base. They own homes that are, expensive, some of them, homes that would require home services, whether it's pools, pest control, you know what I mean, whatever else you might think of. And so they will not tolerate to be communicated with the way that their grandparents preferred to be communicated with. Do you know what I mean? And so if the phone is the only tool that we've got to be able to communicate, I mean, who's going to go for that, right? You need to be texting people. You need to be very available in different ways that didn't even exist 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And so if you're not embracing that type of change, then that could be problematic because you'll be losing market share to younger entrepreneurs that are offering those services to their peers that want it that way, that want it communicated that way. And so, you talk about extinction, your business can go extinct as well, unless you're continuing to evolve.
How do you use technology? So you mentioned, like, let's say a millennial comes to your website, they want maybe an instant chat or they want to be text messages. You don't have to name certain services, but technologies or communication have you implemented that helps with, adopting to maybe a new customer base and everything?
Yeah, and I'm happy to name a couple of the services that we use. They're great. I think that a lot of people should be using them if it makes sense for their clients and for what they're up to and what we're doing. I think that, as you know, we use fully integrated CRM that's called Pest. It's an incredible software that is very, very robust. There's certainly competitors to Pest that either boast different widgets or services or whatever else, but it's a place to be able to store all of our customer information and to be able to communicate with them, whether it's via email or chats or other types of things. On our website, we employ and use a software called Podium, and Podium specifically allows us to be able to text with customers. They're also not the only company that does that, but from my perspective and experience as a client of theirs and as someone that has engaged with them as like a real client or a client of theirs, it's pretty smooth. It's pretty seamless. And so there's probably dozens of others, but those are some of the couple that we have had experience with and use currently that really help to facilitate that communication with our customers. And then guess what, right? Like for our clients that prefer the phone, we still answer the phone. For our clients that prefer email, that's still a thing. We still use it, so we're not refusing to talk to anybody over the phone, right? We just have other ways to be able to communicate in addition to, and it's really, what's your preference?
Yeah, the tried and true ways of communicating still hold true, but adopting it kind of goes in the customer base, which I want to have you talk about next, which is you shift and you have to change and embrace different customer bases, but you're still using the old technology. And sometimes the old technologies, are novel. Like if you talk to someone who's younger and all they do is get flooded with emails and you're like, oh, there's this thing called direct mail and people actually send stuff in the mail to me. Like sometimes that's novel, becomes novel to someone who is younger because they're not used to it at all. So I know that you do multimedia, multi-channel, whether it's text or call or email or sending something in the mail or actually, dialing their phone number. So I'd love for you to talk about the customer change that you embraced. Even the evolution of the customer, like what your initial customers were to what they are now, who you serve.
Yeah, and so we certainly don't. Our purpose is to be able to improve the quality of life for our customers, team, and community. That knows no age, right? And so we're certainly not discriminating. We have customers that are 85 years old. We have customers that are 18 years old, literally. And they are of all different walks. Some live in apartments, some live in multi-million-dollar homes, some live in condos, some live, in some of our different markets, they live in boats and we take care of their boats and airplane. You know what I mean? Some are residential, some are in the commercial space. And so it really is just what and we're not everything to everybody, but we're looking to be able to serve as many customers as we can with the services that we provide or the offers that we have. And so I don't know necessarily that we've seen, well, I take that back. We've seen a humongous shift in our customer base in the sense that there's probably a customer or two that's listening, but it's not that they're more demanding. It's just that they can be, because Amazon has ruined that for all of us, right? I mean, you could order something right now and you'd have a knock at your door and it's the Amazon person. You're like, how in the world, and that's a good thing, right? That's a good thing. And so a high tide raises all boats. And so we're just finding, I guess, over the last 2 decades, and I don't think that any of this is slowing down, that customers, they want it. They want it now. They want it to be done right the first time, right? They want to get the value. You work hard for your money, Jeremy. I work hard for mine. Our customers that we have work hard for theirs. And so the other piece of that is that I feel a great responsibility to take to be a good steward of the money that our customers are exchanging with us. And so they don't price is totally irrelevant, I guess is what I'm getting at. We charge a premium. We're anywhere from 20% to 25% more expensive, if you will, than most of the competitors in most of our markets. And that's not something we shy away from. And our ideal customer, they appreciate that because we take those profits and reinvest them into our people or technology to be able to provide an even better service for them that provides value. So it allows us to be able to have better trained experts, more technology, better products, the best equipment. I mean, this stuff is really, really world class. And um, people recognize that and they keep coming back and they keep coming back. And every day our customers vote and they vote with their pocketbooks, they vote with their hard earned money. And we have a great track record of retaining customers and keeping them coming back time after time after time, year after year. And so I guess that would be some of the shift that our customers are a little more demanding. They want to be communicated with the way that they want to be communicated with. And so we're rolling with those punches and we couldn't be happier to be able to provide those services.
I want to talk about, you mentioned equipment and chemicals. There's probably change and shifts that some people have adopted and some people not, maybe in the eco-friendly realm or something like that. Are there any types of equipment or supplies that you've seen shift in the industry?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, look, so we used to, when we first started, we used to use, and some of our markets still do, and we still have them here locally in Phoenix. But big old giant power sprayers, right? And really, it's not totally necessary if you have someone that is trained, that knows how to apply, where to apply, what to apply, what specific pest they're dealing with, then that's really overkill. And so with less of an application, not less work, but less of an application, you can have the same, if not greater effect. As far as products go, all the pest companies here in Arizona and nationally, we've all got access to the same products. And so the difference is not, the difference in service is not the product that this company uses or that company uses, because we all have the same vehicles for the most part. We all have the same products, the same equipment. And so really at the end of the day, what it comes down to is how quickly someone's able to be there. And then the person that is there at your property, the education and training and expertise that they have to be able to solve your specific problem. And so there's a myriad of things that we do to be able to ensure that that's the right person, to be there on your property to keep customers happy.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if you look at like even pizza places or restaurants, they all have tomatoes,
pizza,
crust, cheese, but they have a different secret sauce and recipe for how they make things. And, I want to touch briefly on a few things, Austin, which is, some actual real examples of extinct. We talk about it, but there are some examples that I'd love for you to comment on, like real world life examples, like Blockbuster versus Netflix, right? And taxis versus Uber and brick and mortar versus Amazon. You touched a little bit about Amazon and maybe why they're gaining so much market share. Maybe what is it with what is your observation with the Netflix versus Blockbuster and Uber versus taxi?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that it's a unique perspective or look, but I mean, I think the thing to note is that, look, the opportunity is always in the problem. And so, or issue. I mean, if you want to provide real value and along the way, maybe make a couple of bucks, listen to what people are complaining about the most. And so what was the beef with Blockbuster, right? I mean, I was
late fees. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, late fees. I thought I saw an article in my feed the other day that and it was like recent news, but that someone had like a $22,000 late fee, like this year, like in 2021 from Blockbuster.
I think there's like one or two stores in the nation that are still in existence.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. We should go visit them before they become extinct, right? I mean, that's like a little bit of nostalgia there. I remember going with my folks to get the movie for Friday night or Saturday night, right? And so, well, what was the problem? One, you had to go there. People don't want to go anywhere they don't want to go, especially to go rent a movie. You had to walk around. You didn't know what the availability was, right? Oh man, this one came out. I really hope that they got it. if it was a new release, right, you had to line up at the door, get ready. Like, it's like, oh, well, I mean, it's out this weekend, but if we go to Blockbuster, it's going to be sold out. And so we'll just go back in 3 weeks when the demand's not so high for it. And so the late fees, people hate late fees. They're the worst, right? And then you got to take it back. Like, what if it gets damaged, which happens, right? Your VCR, I haven't said VCR in, I think, 15 years, but your VCR like eats it, right? Eats all the film. You got to pay for that. And then just like so many things can happen to where and I don't even know what the late fees were, but like, I think that they like accumulated weekly, didn't they? And compounded like your credit card interest rate. So
probably.
I mean, after, anyway, it's funny. And so like, listen to what people are complaining about. Taxis. I can't remember the last time I took a taxi ride. It's been a really long time. And if it was in the last decade, it's only because there wasn't Uber or Lyft there, or they weren't available, or whatever else. But people complained about that. People felt like they were getting ripped off. People felt a little vulnerable, right? They didn't know who was going to be giving them a ride. They didn't know how much it was going to cost. And so, I mean, here we are. It's first part of May 2021. The pandemic stuff is still going on. But you talk about technology. I've probably Ubered, I don't know, maybe 5 times or so in the last 2 weeks. And, what's neat is that with a couple of clicks of the button on the engineering side, and I don't know if you've Ubered in the last, of course you have, but, in the last year or so, but you have to click a box that says, hey, I will wear a mask and I have one and this and that. And so what a neat thing. I mean, how would that information be disseminated previously? Like before, I mean, do you write a memo and then fax that memo to 1,000 locations to then hopefully have it get into the hands of your taxi cab drivers, right? And so, I mean, information is just so fast anymore. But I love taking Ubers or Lyfts. I love to be able to see the picture of my guy or gal, how many rides they've done, what their rating is, how long it's going to take for them to be able to get there. Do I have time to be able to shoot off a couple more emails, right? Or do I need to wait here? There's the piece of technology where they can message you, text you, or give you a phone call, right? And so just all of these things that taxis didn't have, and you don't see taxis around very much anymore. And there's a reason for that.
Yeah, I mean, it is like you said, is disruption. Disruption comes into when you're solving people's pain points and problems. And I know we have to wrap up here, Austin. So last thing is, I always like when you mention a resource or some resources, whether it's books or something else. What do you recommend?
As you asked that, I think the one for me that comes to mind, I really like this book. We've used it for we have something at Moxie that we call the High Living Society. It's book club. It's just fancy for book club. But, at times we'll assign a book a quarter, and anyone that wants to participate can. And then we'll have a really fancy breakfast or brunch, with apple cider and, all of the finer things in life, like Fruity Pebbles and donuts and stuff.
Sign me up.
Yeah. I'll let you know the next time you can come on out. But I would probably reference, it's called the Zappos Experience. And it talks about
Joseph Michelli. Yeah.
And so, one of the 10 core values that they have is to embrace and drive change. And I think that that's super, super important. And Joseph Michelli, I know that he will kind of find different organizations that are interested in being able to have these stories written or books put out there. And he's done a handful of them. And again, it's one of my favorite success stories and business stories out there, the Zappos Experience. And so Joseph Michelli did an incredible job. And, it wasn't just him. I think that he was, they conduct interviews and they really get a lot of insight to be able to make it what they want it to be and to communicate what they want it to communicate. But one of Zappos's core values is embrace and drive change. And so it's not hide out under a rock and think about it, or, wait as long as you can. I mean, they are constantly looking to embrace the change and to drive it. Hey, this might be coming around the horizon. How can we get there faster? How can we make this change faster? How can we get ahead of it so it's not quite so painful? How can we be a trendsetter? How can we? And so Zappos, over the last 2 decades of its existence, has done just, I mean, I don't know how many other companies, Jeremy, are out there that inside of a decade go from zero revenue to $1 billion valuation and are acquired by Amazon. I mean, not not very many. And they weren't a SaaS company, by the way. So I know that's more common in SaaS, but they were an e-commerce company that I think definitely lived up to that core value of embracing the types of change that you and I are talking about: technology, communication, those sorts of things. And they talk a lot about it in their book, The Zappos Experience.
It's no wonder they were purchased by Amazon. And yeah, that was great. Many other of Joseph's books, he's featured the Ritz-Carlton and Starbucks and the Zappos as well. So Austin,
industry leaders, right? Industry leaders. I mean, and what are they doing, right? I mean, Amazon knows a thing or two about change and listening to the customer. So does Mercedes.
Austin, thank you so much. I hope everyone checks out more episodes of the podcast. And thanks again for having me.
Hey, of course. Thanks, Jeremy. Really appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to the Multiply You podcast. You'll see us again soon when you subscribe for future episodes.